Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hollybuzz, your destination for everything related to the world of movies. From upcoming releases and exciting trailers to fascinating, behind-the-scenes stories, character breakdowns, hidden details, and everything else that makes a film worth talking about. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and unusual science fiction movies of 2026, The End of Oak Street, directed and written by David Robert Mitchell. The filmmaker behind it follows. This upcoming movie brings together an extraordinary cast led by Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor, alongside Maisy Stella and Convery. But what makes this movie particularly intriguing is not simply its star-studded cast. The story begins with something that sounds almost impossible. An ordinary suburban neighborhood is suddenly ripped away from its familiar surroundings by a mysterious cosmic event and transported to a completely unknown place. Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your entire neighborhood is no longer where it is supposed to be. The houses, streets, cars, and familiar surroundings are still there, but everything beyond them has changed. The Platt family finds themselves trapped in this bizarre new reality, where the rules of their ordinary life no longer apply and survival becomes their first priority. What initially appears to be a strange science fiction mystery gradually develops into a survival story, involving an environment that is far more dangerous and extraordinary than the family could have imagined. At the center of this extraordinary situation is the Platt family, portrayed by Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Convery. Their family relationship becomes one of the most important elements of the story, because surviving this strange new world requires them to remain together. The official synopsis specifically emphasizes that their survival depends on their ability to stick together while navigating surroundings that have become completely unrecognizable. And then there is the movie's biggest mystery. What exactly happened to Oak Street? What caused an entire neighborhood to be transported somewhere unknown? Where have they gone? Why has this happened? And perhaps most importantly, will the family ever be able to return home? These questions create the mystery at the heart of the movie and give audiences a reason to keep watching as the story unfolds. The film is also visually ambitious, with the production being designed for the big screen and IMAX presentation in North America. Behind the camera, Mitchell is joined by cinematographer Michael Giulakis, production designer Maya Shimaguchi, editor John Axelrad, and composer Michael Giacchino, creating a filmmaking team capable of combining large-scale science fiction with atmosphere, suspense, and character-driven storytelling. Produced by J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper. The film comes from Bad Robot, Jackson Pictures, and David Robert Mitchell's production banner, with Warner Brothers Pictures handling worldwide distribution. It is scheduled to arrive in North American theaters and IMAX on August 14, 2026, with international releases beginning earlier in some territories. So in today's complete Hollybuzz journey, we're going to explore what makes The End of Oak Street such an intriguing 2026 release. We'll look at the movie's story, genre, release date, runtime, director, screenplay, production history, cast, inspirations, filming locations, trailer, visual style, characters, themes, hidden details, and much more. So sit back, stay with us until the very end, and get ready to discover The End of Oak Street, a mysterious science fiction survival story where an ordinary suburban neighborhood becomes the starting point for an extraordinary fight to survive. This is Hollybuzz, and let's begin. In today's video, we're taking a complete and detailed look at The End of Oak Street, 2026, one of the most intriguing science fiction survival films of the year. We'll begin with the basic information about the movie and then gradually explore the story, its genre, release date, runtime, production companies, director, writer, producers, and the talented cast bringing this unusual concept to life. The movie is written and directed by David Robert Mitchell and stars Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Convery. We'll also explore the story and central premise of the movie, how a mysterious cosmic event suddenly tears an entire suburban neighborhood away from its normal surroundings and transports it to an unknown place. The Platt family then finds themselves in an environment they don't understand, where staying together is no longer simply a family choice but a matter of survival. We'll examine what this strange situation means for the characters and what kind of mystery the film appears to be building around their extraordinary circumstances. After that, we'll go behind the scenes and explore the development and production history of the film, including David Robert Mitchell's creative approach, the involvement of J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, the filmmaking team, and the decisions that helped turn this unusual idea into a major theatrical science fiction production. We'll take a closer look at the main characters and their development, especially the Platt family, and examine how their relationships may change when their ordinary suburban life is suddenly transformed into a fight for survival. We'll also discuss the supporting cast and the previous work of the actors, giving you a better understanding of the performers audiences will see on screen. Of course, no movie breakdown would be complete without discussing the trailers. We'll examine the trailer carefully, breaking down the major scenes, visual clues, mysterious moments, dinosaurs, unusual environments, and details that may reveal more about what has happened to Oak Street. We'll also look at the public response to the trailers and why the movie has generated so much curiosity before its theatrical release. The official teaser has already attracted millions of views on Warner Bros. YouTube channel, showing substantial early interest in the project. We'll then explore the movie's themes, symbolism, cinematography, visual effects, music, memorable scenes, hidden details, and possible Easter eggs. Because the film comes from David Robert Mitchell, whose previous work is known for mystery and atmospheric storytelling, we'll pay particular attention to the details that may have deeper meanings rather than simply being visual spectacle. Finally, we'll discuss the movie's strengths and weaknesses, audience expectations, critical response, and overall potential before bringing everything together in our final verdict. Since the film is scheduled for its North American theatrical release on August 14, 2026, some aspects of the final audience and critic response will naturally remain unknown until viewers have experienced the complete movie. So from the mysterious disappearance of an entire neighborhood to a family's struggle for survival in an unfamiliar world, we're going to cover everything you need to know about The End of Oak Street 2026. Stay with us until the end, because there may be much more hiding behind this strange suburban mystery than the trailers reveal. The End of Oak Street 2026 is a science fiction survival thriller, written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, the filmmaker known for It Follows and Under the Silver Lake. The movie stars Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Christian Convery as members of the Platt family, whose ordinary suburban life is suddenly turned upside down by an unexplained cosmic event. Rather than following a conventional alien invasion or dinosaur adventure formula, the film begins with a much stranger premise. An entire suburban neighborhood is mysteriously ripped away from its normal surroundings and transported to an unknown location. At the heart of the story is the Platt family, who suddenly find themselves living in a world that no longer resembles the neighborhood they knew. Their homes and familiar streets remain, but the environment around them has become completely unrecognizable. As they try to understand what has happened, they discover that their greatest challenge is not simply finding a way home, it is staying alive and staying together. The official synopsis describes their journey as one in which their family's survival depends on their ability to remain united while navigating their strange new surroundings. The movie becomes even more intriguing when the family encounters evidence that they are no longer in an ordinary suburban environment. The trailers reveal dinosaurs and prehistoric-looking surroundings, transforming what initially appears to be a mysterious science fiction event into a much larger survival adventure. This creates an unusual contrast. Familiar suburban houses, streets, and everyday objects are suddenly placed against an environment that appears completely alien to the characters. This contrast is one of the movie's most interesting concepts. Instead of taking a group of explorers into a prehistoric world, The End of Oak Street essentially brings an extraordinary world into the middle of ordinary suburbia that allows the filmmakers to explore what happens when people who are accustomed to modern comforts suddenly lose the safety and predictability of their normal environment. The movie also places considerable emphasis on the family relationship. Denise and Greg, played by Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor, are not simply action heroes with unlimited resources. They are parents trying to protect their children, Audrey and Brian, while simultaneously attempting to understand an impossible situation. Their emotional connection, therefore, becomes an important part of the survival story. Visually, the film aims to create a striking combination of suburban Americana, science fiction, mystery, and dinosaur survival. David Robert Mitchell is known for creating atmospheric stories, And this project represents a major step into larger-scale filmmaking. Cinematographer Michael Giolakis, production designer Maya Shimoguchi, editor John Axelrad, and composer Michael Giacchino are among the key creative figures working with Mitchell behind the camera. The movie is being produced by J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper, with Bad Robot, Jackson Pictures, and Mitchell's production banner involved in the production. Warner Brothers Pictures is distributing the film worldwide, with a North American theatrical and IMAX release scheduled for August 14, 2026. Another fascinating part of the movie's identity is the secrecy that surrounded it during development. The project was originally known under the title Flower Vale Street, before Warner Brothers eventually revealed the new title, The End of Oak Street. In 2026, this secrecy encouraged audiences to speculate about the movie's true story and whether there might be a major twist hidden beneath its suburban setting. There has even been online speculation about a possible connection to the Cloverfield universe because of the movie's mysterious cosmic event, bad robot connection, and unusual science fiction premise. However, those theories remain speculation, and the available official information presents The End of Oak Street as its own story, rather than confirming a connection to the Cloverfield franchise. Overall, The End of Oak Street can be described as a family-centered science fiction survival mystery that combines the familiarity of suburban life with the terrifying unpredictability of an unknown world. Instead of simply asking what would happen if dinosaurs returned, the movie asks a much stranger question. What would happen if your entire neighborhood were suddenly transported into a world where everything you understood about your surroundings was gone? That unusual premise, combined with David Robert Mitchell's direction, the performances of Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor, the mysterious storyline, and the large-scale visual presentation, makes The End of Oak Street one of the more distinctive science fiction releases of 2026. The End of Oak Street 2026 is primarily a science fiction survival thriller, but the movie also combines elements of adventure, mystery, family drama, and creature-based suspense. This mixture is one of the things that makes the film different from a straightforward science fiction blockbuster. Instead of focusing only on futuristic technology or an alien invasion, the story places an ordinary family inside an extraordinary and unexplained situation where their familiar neighborhood is suddenly transported to an unknown environment. The science fiction element comes from the mysterious cosmic event that causes the neighborhood to be ripped away from its normal surroundings. The characters are confronted with circumstances that cannot be explained through ordinary science, creating the central mystery of the movie. The strange environment and prehistoric creatures shown in the promotional material further expand the film's science fiction world. At the same time, survival thriller is probably the most important description of the movie's tone. Once the Platt family realizes that they are no longer in their normal world, the question changes from what happened to how are we going to survive? The family has to deal with an environment they do not understand, unfamiliar dangers, and creatures that can turn an ordinary journey through their neighborhood into a life-threatening situation. The movie also contains strong elements of adventure. The characters are essentially forced into an exploration of a world they never expected to encounter. They must move through unfamiliar surroundings, discover what happened to their neighborhood, and search for a way to survive. This gives the story a sense of discovery alongside its danger. Another major genre element is mystery. The film does not immediately explain why Oak Street has disappeared or where the neighborhood has been transported. The lack of answers creates suspense and encourages the audience to look for clues. Rather than giving viewers every explanation at the beginning, the story appears to reveal information gradually as the family learns more about their new surroundings. There is also an important family drama component. The Platt family is at the center of the story, and their survival depends heavily on their ability to remain together. Denise and Greg are not simply trying to save themselves. They are trying to protect their children while dealing with an impossible situation. Their relationships therefore give the movie an emotional foundation beneath all the science fiction spectacle. The presence of dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures also gives the movie a creature-adventure dimension. These creatures are not simply included as visual effects. They represent one of the biggest dangers facing the characters. Their appearance transforms the familiar suburban environment into a place where even the most ordinary surroundings can become dangerous. What makes the genre combination particularly interesting is the contrast between ordinary suburbia and extraordinary danger. The movie takes familiar houses, streets, and family life and places them against a world that appears to belong to an entirely different era or reality. This creates a visual and thematic contrast that separates The End of Oak Street from a conventional dinosaur movie. The movie can therefore be understood as a blend of several genres. Science fiction, because of the unexplained cosmic phenomenon and extraordinary environment. Survival thriller, because the characters must stay alive in a dangerous new world. Adventure, because the family must explore unfamiliar surroundings. Mystery, because the cause of the phenomenon and the nature of their new environment are initially unknown. Family drama, because the emotional relationship between the Platt family is central to the story. Creature thriller, because dinosaurs and other dangerous creatures create physical threats. This combination also fits the filmmaking style of David Robert Mitchell. His previous movies have often relied on mystery, atmosphere, uncertainty, and gradually increasing tension. With The End of Oak Street, he appears to be taking those qualities into a much larger science fiction environment. So, rather than calling The End of Oak Street simply a dinosaur movie, it is more accurate to describe it as a science fiction survival thriller with adventure, mystery, family drama, and creature elements. And that genre combination is exactly what makes the movie interesting. It takes the emotional foundation of a family story, adds the mystery of a science fiction event, places the characters inside an adventure, and then surrounds them with creatures that can turn their new world into a fight for survival. The End of Oak Street 2026 is scheduled to be released in North American theaters and IMAX on August 14, 2026. The film is being distributed worldwide by Warner Brothers Pictures, making it one of the major science fiction releases of the 26 summer movie season. International release dates can vary by territory, with some markets receiving the film around the North American release period. The August release is particularly significant because summer is traditionally one of Hollywood's strongest periods for large-scale theatrical movies. By positioning The End of Oak Street in the middle of August, Warner Brothers is giving the film an opportunity to attract audiences looking for a major science fiction and adventure experience during the summer period. The IMAX presentation is also important because the movie's large environments, mysterious phenomenon, and dinosaur sequences are designed to benefit from a large screen cinematic experience. Interestingly, the movie has gone through a title change during its development. It was originally known as Flowervale Street before being renamed The End of Oak Street. This change helped create additional curiosity around the project, particularly because details about the story were kept relatively secret for a considerable period. The release date also means that the movie is arriving at a time when audiences are already familiar with its central stars. Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor lead the cast, while director David Robert Mitchell brings his distinctive approach to mystery and suspense. Their involvement gives the film an appeal beyond its science fiction concept. So, for Hollybuzz, the key date to remember is August 14, 2026, the scheduled North American theatrical and IMAX release of The End of Oak Street. For fans of science fiction, mystery, adventure, and large-scale creature films, this is a release date worth keeping on the calendar. The End of Oak Street 2026 has a reported runtime of approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes, or around 135 minutes. This makes it a fairly substantial feature-length science fiction film, giving director David Robert Mitchell enough time to develop both the mystery surrounding Oak Street and the emotional journey of the Platt family. The relatively long runtime is also understandable, considering the scale of the story. The film has to establish the family's ordinary suburban life, introduce the mysterious event that completely changes their surroundings, reveal the strange world they find themselves in, and then develop the survival challenges that follow. At the same time, the movie needs to balance its science fiction elements and creature sequences with character development and suspense. For a movie built around a mysterious event, the additional runtime can be particularly useful. Instead of immediately explaining everything, the filmmakers can gradually reveal clues about what happened and allow the audience to experience the confusion alongside the characters. This can make the mystery more engaging and give the story enough room to build tension. So if you're planning to watch The End of Oak Street in theaters, Expect a cinematic experience lasting roughly 135 minutes. With its science fiction mystery, family-centered story, large-scale visuals, and survival elements, the runtime gives the film plenty of space to take audiences from an ordinary suburban street into a completely extraordinary world. The End of Oak Street, 26, is being developed as a major science fiction production backed by several established filmmaking companies. The principal production banners associated with the movie are Bad Robot, Jackson Pictures, and David Robert Mitchell's production company, bringing together the resources of an established Hollywood producer with the creative vision of the film's writer-director. Bad Robot is particularly significant because the company was founded by J.J. Abrams, who is also one of the producers of the film. Bad Robot has extensive experience producing large-scale science fiction and mystery projects, making it a natural production partner for a movie built around an unexplained cosmic event and a mysterious transformation of an ordinary neighborhood. Another production company involved is Jackson Pictures, the production company associated with producer Matt Jackson. Its involvement adds further production support to the project, particularly as the film requires substantial visual effects, large-scale environments, and complex filmmaking logistics. The movie is also produced through David Robert Mitchell's own production banner, allowing the writer-director to maintain a strong creative role in the project. Mitchell is not only directing the movie but also producing it, giving him significant involvement in shaping the film's overall tone, story, visual identity, and atmosphere. The producing team includes J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper. Their combined experience gives the project a strong production foundation, particularly for a movie that combines intimate family, drama with large-scale science fiction, and creature elements. It is important to distinguish the production companies from the distributor. Warner Bros. Pictures is responsible for distributing The End of Oak Street worldwide, but it is not the same thing as being the principal production company. The production companies develop and produce the movie, while the distributor handles its theatrical release and marketing in the relevant markets. The combination of Bad Robot's science fiction experience, Jackson Pictures' production involvement, and David Robert Mitchell's creative control gives The End of Oak Street an interesting foundation. The movie is therefore not simply a small independent science fiction experiment. It has been developed as a major theatrical production with an internationally recognized cast and a major studio distributor behind it. For Hollybuzz, the key names to remember are Bad Robot, Jackson Pictures, and David Robert Mitchell's production banner as the principal production entities, with Warner Bros. Pictures serving as the worldwide distributor. This combination brings together Hollywood production resources and Mitchell's distinctive, creative approach to create one of the more unusual science fiction films scheduled for 2026. The screenplay of The End of Oak Street, 26, is written by David Robert Mitchell, who is also serving as the film's director. This is an important part of the movie because Mitchell is not simply directing a script written by someone else. He is responsible for both the storytelling and the visual execution of the project. That gives him greater creative control over the film's tone, characters, mystery, and overall atmosphere. Mitchell is known for writing and directing films that combine mystery, suspense, unusual concepts, and psychological tension. His previous works, particularly It Follows and Under the Silver Lake, demonstrated his interest in creating stories where audiences are encouraged to question what is really happening. With The End of Oak Street, he takes that approach into a much larger science fiction setting, combining an unexplained cosmic event with a family survival story. The screenplay begins with a remarkably unusual premise. An ordinary suburban neighborhood is suddenly ripped from its familiar surroundings and transported to an unknown location. The story then follows the Platt family as they attempt to understand their situation and survive in an environment that is completely different from the world they knew. This concept allows the screenplay to move between mystery, family drama, adventure, and survival. One of the screenplay's most important elements is the decision to make the family relationship central to the story. Instead of creating a movie where characters exist only to react to spectacular visual effects, Mitchell places the Platt family at the emotional center. Their relationships become increasingly important as their familiar world disappears and they are forced to depend on one another. The screenplay also appears to deliberately hold back information. Rather than explaining the strange event immediately, The story allows the audience to discover the situation alongside the characters. This creates a sense of uncertainty. Where exactly are they? What caused the event, and what kind of world have they entered? Another interesting aspect is the contrast between ordinary suburban life and extraordinary danger. The screenplay takes something extremely familiar, a neighborhood filled with houses, streets, families, and everyday routines, and places it into an environment where prehistoric creatures and unknown dangers can suddenly appear. This contrast gives the movie much of its distinctive identity. The screenplay also gives the film an opportunity to explore themes such as family, survival, fear of the unknown, adaptation, and the loss of control. The characters are essentially forced to abandon the assumptions they have always relied upon. Their normal knowledge of the world is no longer enough, so they must learn how to adapt to circumstances they never imagined possible. David Robert Mitchell's dual role as writer and director is especially valuable for a story like this, because he created the screenplay and is also responsible for bringing it to the screen. He can closely control how information is revealed, how suspense develops, and how the visual elements support the story. The screenplay also has to balance two very different scales. On one side is the intimate family story involving parents and children. On the other is an enormous science fiction mystery involving an entire neighborhood and a completely unfamiliar environment. Maintaining that balance is one of the film's biggest storytelling challenges. The presence of Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor as the parents also gives the screenplay strong dramatic possibilities. Their characters have to respond not only to external threats, but also to the pressure of protecting their children while dealing with a situation that they cannot understand or control. Overall, the screenplay of The End of Oak Street is built around a simple but fascinating question. What happens when an ordinary family is suddenly removed from the world they know and forced to survive, somewhere they were never meant to be? For Hollybuzz, the key point is that David Robert Mitchell is both the writer and director. His screenplay combines science fiction, mystery, survival, adventure, and family drama, using an extraordinary premise to explore how ordinary people respond when their entire understanding of the world suddenly disappears. The production of The End of Oak Street 2026 is supported by an experienced group of producers, bringing together major Hollywood production experience with the creative vision of writer-director David Robert Mitchell. The principal producers are J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper. Their combined involvement is particularly important because the movie requires both the intimate storytelling of a family drama and the large-scale resources needed for a science fiction survival film. One of the most recognizable producers attached to the project is J.J. Abrams. Abrams is widely known for his work in science fiction and large-scale filmmaking, and his production company Bad Robot is also involved with the movie. His experience with mysterious, high-concept stories makes his involvement particularly appropriate for a film built around an unexplained cosmic event and an extraordinary transformation of an ordinary suburban neighborhood. Hannah Minghella is another important producer on the project. She has extensive experience working on major film productions and has been involved in projects that combine strong storytelling with large-scale studio filmmaking. Her role contributes to the organizational and creative side of bringing the project from screenplay to finished feature. John Cohen is also among the film's producers. His experience in film production adds another layer of professional support to a project that requires extensive coordination between actors, filmmakers, visual effects teams, production designers, and other departments. The film's writer-director, David Robert Mitchell, is also credited as a producer. This is significant because Mitchell therefore has creative involvement at several levels of the production. He created the screenplay, directs the movie, and participates in producing it, giving him considerable influence over the film's overall creative direction. Matt Jackson is another producer associated with the project and is connected with Jackson Pictures, one of the production companies behind the film. His involvement helps provide the production infrastructure required for a major theatrical release. Tommy Harper also serves as a producer. Harper has worked on major Hollywood productions, particularly large-scale films, involving complex visual effects and demanding production logistics. His experience is valuable for a movie that combines real-world locations with extensive science fiction imagery. Together, These producers helped oversee the different stages of the project, from development and financing to casting, filming, post-production, and preparation for theatrical release. Producing a film of this scale involves far more than simply arranging cameras and actors. The producers have to coordinate budgets, schedules, locations, crew, visual effects, marketing arrangements, and relationships with the studio and distribution partners. The production is associated with Bad Robot, Jackson Pictures, and David Robert Mitchell's production banner, while Warner Bros. Pictures is handling worldwide distribution. This distinction is important because the production companies are responsible for developing and producing the film, whereas Warner Bros. Is responsible for bringing the completed movie to audiences through its distribution network. The producer's involvement is particularly important because The End of Oak Street is an unusual project. The story begins with an ordinary suburban family, but eventually expands into a large-scale science fiction survival adventure involving an extraordinary environment and prehistoric creatures. Creating that contrast requires careful coordination between the story, practical filmmaking, production design, visual effects, cinematography, and sound. Ultimately, the producer team gives The End of Oak Street a strong combination of creative leadership and Hollywood production experience. J.J. Abrams brings his background in ambitious science fiction projects. David Robert Mitchell provides the film's central creative vision, and the remaining producers contribute their experience in managing a complex feature film production. For Hollybuzz, the main names to remember are J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper. Their combined work helped transform Mitchell's unusual screenplay into a major theatrical science fiction production starring Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor. The End of Oak Street 2026 was made because writer-director David Robert Mitchell wanted to take a very simple, everyday image and turn it into something extraordinary. Mitchell has explained that the idea began when he was walking through his neighborhood in Michigan. He noticed an ordinary scene involving a house, a garage, a chain-link fence, and some garbage cans, and suddenly imagined a dinosaur standing in that completely normal suburban setting. That strange mental image became the starting point for the movie. What makes this idea particularly interesting is that Mitchell did not simply want to make another dinosaur movie similar to Jurassic Park. He has openly said that he loves the original Jurassic Park, but he wanted to do something different with the concept. Instead of taking characters into a traditional dinosaur park or an isolated prehistoric island, he reversed the idea. He brought the dinosaurs into the world of ordinary suburban families. The result is a story in which an entire neighborhood is mysteriously transported to an unknown place, leaving the residents to deal with a world they were never prepared to survive. And another major reason for making the film was Mitchell's desire to combine spectacle with character and emotion. He has described his approach as being influenced by the kind of genre filmmaking associated with the 1970s and 1980s, particularly the classic Amblin-style combination of ordinary family life, adventure, suspense, humor, and extraordinary events. Rather than allowing the dinosaurs and visual effects to become the entire point of the movie, Mitchell wanted the audience to remain emotionally connected to the family at the center of the story. Mitchell has specifically mentioned films and television, works such as The Twilight Zone, Poltergeist, The Valley of Gwangi, and Signs as important reference points. These influences help explain why The End of Oak Street is being presented as more than a conventional creature movie. The filmmakers wanted an atmosphere of mystery and uncertainty, where the audience does not immediately receive every answer and is encouraged to wonder what has happened to the neighborhood and why. The movie was also made to explore the family dynamic under extreme pressure. The Platt family already has its own tensions before the extraordinary event occurs. Once their neighborhood is transported into an unfamiliar and dangerous environment, those existing relationships are tested even further. Mitchell has explained that the story is interested in how an unimaginable crisis can affect a family's relationships, for better or worse. In other words, the dinosaurs are not the only source of conflict. The screenplay also asks whether a family can remain united when everything they know has disappeared. There is also a deliberate element of mystery behind the film's creation. For much of its development, very little was revealed about the project. It was originally known as Flowervale Street, and the filmmakers kept its story relatively secret. Even the eventual title, The End of Oak Street, was only revealed in 2026 alongside the first teaser. This secrecy was part of the movie's appeal because Mitchell wanted audiences to encounter the unusual concept with as little prior information as possible. The project also gave Mitchell an opportunity to move into much larger-scale filmmaking. His earlier films, particularly It Follows and Under the Silver Lake, were made on significantly smaller scales. The End of Oak Street represents a major expansion, with a reported budget of around $85 million, allowing him to realize the dinosaur-filled suburban world on a much larger cinematic canvas. So at its core, the movie was made because David Robert Mitchell wanted to turn a simple mental image, a dinosaur appearing in an ordinary suburban neighborhood, into a complete cinematic experience. From that image grew a story about a family, a mysterious cosmic event, survival, dinosaurs, and the strange collision between the familiar and the impossible. For Hollybuzz, the most interesting takeaway is that The End of Oak Street did not begin with a complicated mythology or a pre-existing franchise. It began with one strange visual thought. What would it look like if a dinosaur suddenly appeared in an ordinary suburban neighborhood? Mitchell then built an entire movie around that question, combining his love of dinosaurs with the mystery and atmosphere of classic science fiction and the emotional focus of a family survival story. The inspiration behind The End of Oak Street 2026 began with a surprisingly simple image in the mind of writer-director David Robert Mitchell. While walking through his neighborhood in Michigan, Mitchell noticed an ordinary suburban setting with a garage, a chain-link fence, and garbage cans. He suddenly imagined what it would look like if a dinosaur were standing there, interacting with this completely normal suburban environment. That contrast between something prehistoric and something extremely familiar became the basic creative spark for the movie. Mitchell's idea was not simply to make another traditional dinosaur movie. He wanted to explore what happens when the fantastical suddenly invades an ordinary middle-class neighborhood. Instead of sending scientists or adventurers to a prehistoric island, as in many familiar dinosaur stories, he reversed the concept. The neighborhood itself becomes displaced into a strange environment where dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures exist. This allowed him to combine everyday family life with large-scale science fiction spectacle. One of the most obvious reference points is Jurassic Park. Mitchell has openly said that he loves the original film, but he did not want to simply copy its formula. His goal was to do something different with dinosaurs. Rather than focusing primarily on scientists discovering genetically recreated creatures, The End of Oak Street uses the dinosaurs as part of a much stranger mystery involving an entire suburban neighborhood. Mitchell also looked much further back than Jurassic Park for inspiration. He specifically identified the Twilight Zone, Poltergeist, the Valley of Gwangi, and M. Night Shyamalan's Signs as important reference points. These influences help explain why the film is not being presented as a straightforward creature adventure. The filmmakers wanted a mixture of science fiction, suspense, mystery, family drama, humor, and terror. The Twilight Zone is particularly important because of its storytelling approach. The series often took ordinary people and placed them inside completely extraordinary circumstances without immediately explaining what was happening. That same feeling of uncertainty is central to The End of Oak Street. The audience is introduced to a familiar suburban world, but something impossible happens, and both the characters and viewers have to gradually discover the rules of their new reality. Sci-fi Poltergeist provided another important influence because it demonstrated how extraordinary and frightening events could happen directly inside a seemingly safe suburban environment. Mitchell has recalled seeing Poltergeist when he was younger and being particularly affected by the frightening tree outside the bedroom window. That idea of something terrifying appearing within an ordinary family environment clearly fits the creative philosophy behind The End of Oak Street. The movie also draws from the broader 1980s Amblin style, particularly the tradition of placing ordinary families and children at the center of extraordinary adventures. Mitchell has described his goal as merging character with spectacle, allowing the audience to care about the people while simultaneously giving them large-scale visual experiences. That means the dinosaurs are not supposed to be the entire movie. The emotional story of the Platt family remains equally important. Another inspiration is M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. Like Signs, The End of Oak Street uses a familiar family environment as the foundation for an extraordinary mystery. The audience is encouraged to pay attention to the surroundings and wonder what is happening beyond what the characters can immediately understand. This creates suspense without having to reveal the complete explanation at the beginning. The movie's family element was also fundamental to Mitchell's concept. The Platt family already has tensions and complicated relationships before the extraordinary event takes place. Once their neighborhood is suddenly removed from its normal surroundings, those existing problems are placed under enormous pressure. Mitchell has explained that the film explores how an extreme and dangerous situation can affect a family's relationships, whether it brings them closer together or pushes them further apart. So the inspiration behind The End of Oak Street is really a combination of one simple, personal image and several classic filmmaking influences. Mitchell started with the strange thought of seeing a dinosaur in his own ordinary neighborhood. He then combined that idea with his love of dinosaurs, the mystery of the Twilight Zone, the suburban horror of Poltergeist, the spectacle of Jurassic Park, the atmosphere of Signs, and the character-driven adventure style associated with 1970s and 1980s genre cinema, and that combination explains why The End of Oak Street feels so unusual. At its heart, the movie asks a wonderfully simple question. What if something completely impossible suddenly appeared in the safest and most familiar place, your own neighborhood? Mitchell took that question and expanded it into a story about a family, dinosaurs' mystery survival, and the terrifying collision between the ordinary and the extraordinary. For Hollybuzz, the biggest takeaway is that this movie wasn't born from a franchise or an existing property. It began with David Robert Mitchell looking at an ordinary suburban street and imagining a dinosaur standing there. From that single image grew an ambitious science fiction film inspired by some of the most memorable mystery, horror, adventure, and creature stories of the past several decades. The filming of The End of Oak Street 2026 took place primarily in the United States and the United Kingdom, with Atlanta, Georgia, and London, England serving as the principal production locations. Principal photography began on March 22, 2024, and was completed on June 4, 2024. The production used a mixture of real suburban locations and studio facilities to create the fictional Oak Street neighborhood and the increasingly strange world surrounding it. One of the most important filming areas was Atlanta, Georgia. Real suburban streets in the Atlanta area were used to create the neighborhood where the Platt family lives. This was an important choice because the movie's concept depends heavily on the contrast between an ordinary, recognizable American suburb and the extraordinary prehistoric environment that eventually surrounds it. Locations reported in the Atlanta area include Aaron Avenue SW, Westwood Avenue SW, Dover Boulevard SW, and Howell Drive SW, which were used for scenes depicting the neighborhood and the family's everyday surroundings. The Atlanta locations help make Oak Street feel like a genuine residential community rather than an artificial movie set. This realism becomes particularly important once the extraordinary events begin. Seeing familiar houses, roads, gardens, vehicles, and suburban streets makes the later appearance of dinosaurs and other strange elements feel much more surprising because the audience begins in a world that looks completely normal. The production also used Electric Owl Studios in Decatur, Georgia at 3963 Redden Road. For studio work, studio facilities allowed the filmmakers to construct controlled interior environments and combine physical sets with visual effects. This was particularly useful for a film that requires the ordinary suburban world to interact with large-scale science fiction and creature elements. Another major production hub was London, England. The film's production records list London alongside Atlanta as a principal filming location. London provided studio and production facilities that could support the technically demanding aspects of the project, including set construction, controlled filming environments, and visual effects integration. The decision to film in both Atlanta and London gave the production flexibility. Atlanta could provide authentic American suburban surroundings, while London offered sophisticated studio infrastructure for scenes that would have been difficult or impractical to shoot entirely on location. There have also been reports connecting the production with New Orleans, although the most consistently documented principal filming locations are Atlanta and London, because some production activity can involve additional sets. reshoots, or unpublicized locations. It is safer to describe New Orleans as a reported production location, rather than present it as the film's primary filming base. The strongest available location records specifically identify Atlanta and London. What makes the locations particularly interesting is that the filmmakers did not want the movie to look like a conventional fantasy world from the beginning. The familiar suburban environment is essential to the story. The audience first needs to understand the normality of Oak Street before that normality is destroyed by the mysterious cosmic event. This approach also supports the film's central visual idea: ordinary houses surrounded by extraordinary creatures. Instead of transporting the characters to a completely unfamiliar fantasy landscape, from the opening scene, Mitchell places the impossible directly into a recognizable suburban setting. That makes the transformation of the neighborhood one of the movie's most important visual concepts. For Hollybuzz, the key filming location facts are simple. Atlanta, Georgia was the principal American location. London, England was another major production hub, and studio facilities in Decatur, Georgia were also used. Principal photography ran from March 22 to June 4, 2024. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that some of the Atlanta streets used for the film are real residential locations. So when audiences see the fictional Oak Street neighborhood on screen, they are not necessarily looking at a completely computer-generated world. The filmmakers grounded much of the story in real American suburban environments before transforming those familiar surroundings into something far more mysterious and dangerous. Now let's take a look at some of the most interesting behind-the-scenes facts about the end of Oak Street, 2026. One of the most fascinating facts is that the entire movie can be traced back to a very simple image and director, David Robert Mitchell's imagination. While walking through his neighborhood in Michigan, Mitchell looked at an ordinary suburban setting and suddenly imagined a dinosaur standing there. That strange contrast between a normal neighborhood and a prehistoric creature eventually became the foundation for the entire film. Another interesting fact is that Mitchell wanted the movie to feel different from a conventional dinosaur blockbuster. Although Jurassic Park was an important influence, his goal wasn't simply to make another movie about people visiting a dinosaur-filled location. Instead, he reversed the concept by bringing dinosaurs into an ordinary suburban environment. This allowed him to combine the spectacle of a creature movie with the emotional story of a family trying to survive together. The movie was also heavily influenced by classic 1970s and 1980s genre filmmaking. Mitchell has specifically discussed the influence of The Twilight Zone, Poltergeist, and Signs. These influences help explain why the film combines mystery and suspense with extraordinary creatures rather than functioning as a straightforward action adventure. J.J. Abrams also reportedly saw the project as having the qualities of an episode of The Twilight Zone, ordinary people suddenly placed into an absurd but frightening situation. Particularly interesting, behind-the-scenes detail concerns the movie's visual effects, Industrial Light and Magic. One of Hollywood's most famous visual effects companies handled major VFX work for the film. ILM's team included production VFX supervisor Jay Cooper, executive VFX producer Catherine Bluff, and VFX producer Keith Anthony Brown. Their work involved creating the prehistoric creatures and environments that could not simply be filmed practically. The effects work was especially challenging because the filmmakers wanted the dinosaurs to appear naturally within ordinary suburban surroundings. The audience has to believe that houses, streets, gardens, cars, actors, and enormous prehistoric creatures all occupy the same physical space. That requires detailed digital modeling, animation, lighting, compositing, and environment work rather than simply placing a computer-generated dinosaur over a piece of footage. The cast also had an interesting experience while making the movie. Anne Hathaway described the production as feeling like dinosaur camp, reflecting the camaraderie among the cast and crew despite the demanding conditions. At the recent premiere, Hathaway joked that one of her survival lessons from the movie was the importance of maintaining a sense of humor, while Ewan McGregor took a much more practical approach and joked that everyone should keep a sledgehammer nearby for emergencies. The movie also underwent a significant title change. During development, it was known as Flowervale Street. The project was initially kept quite secret, which encouraged audiences to speculate about what kind of movie it actually was. The title was eventually changed to The End of Oak Street before the marketing campaign fully revealed its dinosaur survival premise. Another fascinating fact is that the project went through a long development period and several release date changes. It was originally scheduled for an earlier release before eventually settling on August 14th, 2026 for its North American theatrical and IMAX release. The production itself had already been completed in 2024, with principal photography running from March 22 to June 4, 2024, making the gap between filming and final release considerably longer than audiences might expect. The casting process also changed during development. Anne Hathaway was attached early, while Oscar Isaac was initially in talks to co-star opposite her. Isaac ultimately did not join the finished film, and Ewan McGregor took the role instead. Maisy Stella and Convery later joined the cast as the Platt family's children. The film's production team is another impressive behind-the-scenes element. J.J. Abrams, Hannah Minghella, John Cohen, David Robert Mitchell, Matt Jackson, and Tommy Harper are credited as producers, while Mitchell also serves as the writer and director. The official movie site identifies Michael Joulakis as cinematographer, Maya Shimaguchi as production designer, John Axelrad as editor, Michael Giacchino as composer, and Aaron Benak as costume designer. There is also an interesting marketing story surrounding the film. The mystery surrounding the project lasted for years, and even after the first trailer arrived, fans began developing theories about possible connections to the Cloverfield universe because of the bad robot connection, the cosmic event, and similarities in the film's mysterious setup. However, those theories remain fan speculation, and there is no official confirmation that the End of Oak Street is part of the Cloverfield franchise. And finally, the movie's marketing has itself become part of the behind-the-scenes story. In London, a large 3D dinosaur-themed installation was created in Canary Wharf to promote the film, transforming part of Montgomery Square into a prehistoric-looking scene complete with dinosaur imagery and damaged London props. The installation was designed to mirror the movie's central concept of ordinary urban surroundings being invaded by a prehistoric world. So, behind the scenes, The End of Oak Street is much more than a simple dinosaur movie. It began with one strange image in David Robert Mitchell's mind, developed through years of secrecy and changes, brought together a major cast and production team, and required extensive visual effects. Work from ILM to transform ordinary suburban environments into a prehistoric survival world. For Hollybuzz, the most interesting fact may be the simplest one. The entire movie, essentially, started with David Robert Mitchell looking at his own neighborhood and imagining a dinosaur standing there. From that single thought came a 85 million scale science fiction production combining family drama, mystery, classic suburban filmmaking, and modern dinosaur effects. The marketing campaign for The End of Oak Street 2026 has generated considerable attention, particularly because the filmmakers kept the movie's premise mysterious for a long time. The official teaser trailer, released by Warner Brothers on March 26, 2026, quickly became a major talking point. The official Warner Brothers YouTube upload has accumulated more than 28 million views, along with over 61,000 likes, showing that audiences were strongly interested in discovering what David Robert Mitchell's mysterious science fiction project was actually about. The response became even stronger when the official trailer arrived on June 1st, 2026. Current trailer tracking figures put the main trailer at roughly 29 million views, while the teaser has passed the 30 million view mark across tracked versions. The trailer's engagement has also been impressive, with the main trailer recording more than 116,000 likes and a very high positive to negative reaction ratio. These numbers suggest that the movie has succeeded in creating curiosity well before its theatrical release. A major reason for the reaction is the movie's unusual premise. The trailer begins with what appears to be a normal suburban family story, but gradually reveals that something extraordinary has happened to the entire neighborhood. The discovery that the characters may have been transported into a prehistoric environment and the eventual appearance of dinosaurs completely changes the scale of the story. Viewers who expected a mysterious family thriller suddenly realized that the film could also become a large-scale dinosaur survival adventure. The public reaction has not been completely one-sided, however. Many viewers have praised the original concept, mysterious atmosphere, dinosaurs and strong cast, while some online reactions have questioned whether the story might ultimately be too simple or too similar to familiar dinosaur movies. Discussions on fan communities have also repeatedly compared the film to Jurassic Park, with some viewers excited by the similarities and others hoping Mitchell's movie will offer something genuinely different. The public reaction has not been completely one-sided, however. Many viewers have praised the original concept, mysterious atmosphere, dinosaurs and strong cast, while some online reactions have questioned whether the story might ultimately be too simple or too similar to familiar dinosaur movies. Discussions on fan communities have also repeatedly compared the film to Jurassic Park, with some viewers excited by the similarities and others hoping Mitchell's movie will offer something genuinely different. Another major source of discussion has been the possibility of a connection to the Cloverfield universe. Because the movie is produced by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot, involves a mysterious cosmic event, and was surrounded by secrecy during development. Fans began searching the trailers for possible clues. Some theories have become extremely detailed, although there is still no official confirmation that The End of Oak Street is a Cloverfield movie. The reaction from early viewers has also been encouraging. Ahead of the theatrical release, social media reactions from advanced screenings have described the film as a fun, family-friendly science fiction adventure, while other early reactions have praised its strong Amblin-style atmosphere and comparisons to the original, Jurassic Park. These are early audience reactions rather than full published reviews, so they should be treated as an initial indication rather than a final critical verdict. There is also significant interest in the movie because of its cast. Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor are major Hollywood names, while director David Robert Mitchell has an established reputation for atmospheric and unconventional storytelling. Their combination has encouraged audiences to expect something more ambitious than a standard dinosaur adventure. Overall, the trailer campaign has achieved one of its most important goals. It has made people curious. The marketing has revealed enough to establish the basic premise: an ordinary neighborhood, a mysterious cosmic event, an unknown environment, and dinosaurs, while deliberately leaving major questions unanswered. That balance between information and mystery appears to be one of the biggest reasons audiences are talking about the film. So for Hollybuzz, the current picture is clear. The End of Oak Street has generated strong trailer engagement, substantial online discussion, enthusiastic early reactions, and plenty of fan theories. The biggest question now is whether the finished movie can live up to the enormous curiosity created by its trailers, or whether the mystery surrounding Oak Street will ultimately prove more exciting than the answers themselves. The official teaser trailer for The End of Oak Street was released on March 26, 2026, followed by the full official trailer on June 1, 2026, and right from the opening moments, the filmmakers make it clear that this is not going to be a conventional dinosaur movie. The trailer begins in what looks like a completely ordinary 1980s American suburban neighborhood, introducing the Platt family and their normal daily life. Anne Hathaway plays Denise Platt, while Ewan McGregor plays her husband Greg, with Maisy Stella and Convery portraying their children. The peaceful atmosphere, however, does not last for long. One particularly interesting aspect of the trailer is the way it uses contrast. The filmmakers deliberately place everyday suburban objects, houses, roads, vehicles, gardens, and family homes against an environment filled with dinosaurs and prehistoric landscapes. This contrast makes the creatures feel even more extraordinary. Rather than transporting the characters to a completely unfamiliar fantasy world, the movie appears to have taken their familiar world with them. The trailer also focuses heavily on the family's reaction. Denise and Greg are not presented as professional soldiers or dinosaur hunters. They are ordinary parents who suddenly find themselves responsible for keeping their children alive. Their fear, confusion, and urgency make the situation more relatable because the audience experiences the impossible circumstances through the family's perspective. The action becomes increasingly intense as the trailer progresses. We see the family running from dinosaurs, attempting to escape dangerous situations, and desperately trying to remain together. The official synopsis emphasizes that their survival depends on sticking together, and the trailer reinforces this idea repeatedly. The dinosaurs may be the physical threat, but the family's ability to cooperate appears to be one of the movie's most important survival tools. One of the first major clues comes when the family notices a strange bright light in the sky. At first, it seems like something mysterious but perhaps harmless. However, the trailer gradually builds tension around this event. suggesting that the light is connected to something much bigger. The family soon realizes that something has happened to their neighborhood, and the official tagline, "Our house, our neighborhood, our whole street has moved," perfectly summarizes the central mystery. Their entire street has somehow been removed from its original surroundings and transported somewhere completely unknown. The full trailer then gives us a much clearer idea of what happened next. Instead of remaining in their familiar suburban environment, the Platt family discovers that their neighborhood is now surrounded by a prehistoric world. This is where the trailer delivers its biggest surprise: dinosaurs. What initially looks like a mysterious science fiction thriller suddenly transforms into a survival adventure involving enormous prehistoric creatures. The trailer shows dinosaurs moving through streets and residential areas, creating the bizarre image of ordinary houses existing alongside creatures that should have been extinct for millions of years. One particularly interesting aspect of the trailer is the way it uses contrast. The filmmakers deliberately place everyday suburban objects, houses, roads, vehicles, gardens, and family homes against an environment filled with dinosaurs and prehistoric landscapes. This contrast makes the creatures feel even more extraordinary. Rather than transporting the characters to a completely unfamiliar fantasy world, the movie appears to have taken their familiar world with them. The trailer also focuses heavily on the family's reaction. Denise and Greg are not presented as professional soldiers or dinosaur hunters. They are ordinary parents who suddenly find themselves responsible for keeping their children alive. Their fear, confusion, and urgency make the situation more relatable because the audience experiences the impossible circumstances through the family's perspective. The action becomes increasingly intense as the trailer progresses. We see the family running from dinosaurs, attempting to escape dangerous situations, and desperately trying to remain together. The official synopsis emphasizes that their survival depends on sticking together, and the trailer reinforces this idea repeatedly. The dinosaurs may be the physical threat, but the family's ability to cooperate appears to be one of the movie's most important survival tools. The soundtrack is another interesting element. The full trailer uses Billy Joel's My Life, creating an unusual contrast between a familiar song and increasingly chaotic dinosaur imagery. Instead of using non-stop dramatic music from the beginning, the trailer initially allows the song to establish a sense of normality before the increasingly bizarre events begin taking over. This makes the transition from suburban family life to prehistoric survival even more noticeable. Visually, the trailer also gives us an early look at the film's large-scale creature effects. We see different types of dinosaurs rather than just one iconic species. Reports on the trailer specifically point to feathered raptors and a much larger, unidentified predator, suggesting that the filmmakers are attempting to create a broader, prehistoric ecosystem rather than simply repeating the familiar T-Rex versus humans formula. Another major mystery remains deliberately unanswered. Why did Oak Street move? The trailer confirms the cosmic event, but does not provide a complete explanation for it. We don't know exactly what caused the phenomenon, where the neighborhood has gone, or whether the family can return home. This is clearly intentional because David Robert Mitchell's filmmaking style relies heavily on mystery and uncertainty. The trailer gives us the situation, but carefully avoids revealing the complete answer. There are also several moments that have encouraged Cloverfield theories among fans. The mysterious cosmic event, the unexplained bright light, the involvement of J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, and the film's original title, Flowervale Street, have all led viewers to speculate about a possible connection. However, these remain theories rather than confirmed information, so the trailer should not be treated as proof of a Cloverfield connection. Tom's Guide. Overall, the trailer successfully presents the movie as a combination of science fiction mystery, family drama, dinosaur adventure, and survival thriller. It starts with a simple question: why has the neighborhood moved? And then gradually reveals a much bigger problem. The family is now trapped in a world where dinosaurs are alive, and their ordinary suburban environment has become a dangerous place. And perhaps that is the trailer's biggest strength. It doesn't reveal everything. It gives audiences enough information to understand the basic premise, but it keeps the biggest mysteries hidden. We know that something happened to Oak Street. We know the family has entered a prehistoric environment, and we know dinosaurs are going to be a major threat, but we still don't know why this happened or how the story will ultimately resolve it. For Hollybuzz, the trailer can therefore be summed up in one sentence. An ordinary suburban family wakes up to discover that their entire neighborhood has been transported into a mysterious, prehistoric world, forcing them to stay together while trying to survive. Creatures that should only exist in the distant past. And that unusual combination is exactly what makes The End of Oak Street one of the more intriguing science fiction releases of 2026. The End of Oak Street 2026 is fundamentally a character-driven survival story with the Platt family at its center. The main family consists of Denise, Greg, Audrey, and Brian, played by Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Christian Convery, respectively. The official synopsis emphasizes that their survival depends on staying together. After the mysterious cosmic event transforms their ordinary neighborhood into an unknown and dangerous environment. Denise Platt, Anne Hathaway. Denise is arguably the emotional center of the story. She is not introduced as a conventional action hero. Instead, she is an ordinary mother whose personal life is already complicated before the extraordinary event occurs. Her greatest concern becomes protecting her children and finding a way to survive in a world where all the normal rules have disappeared. What makes Denise interesting is the conflict between fear and responsibility.
She is frightened by the situation,
but she cannot simply panic because her children depend on her. As the danger increases, she becomes increasingly decisive and willing to take risks. This gives her character an important transformation from someone struggling with personal and family problems into someone capable of making difficult decisions when the survival of her family is at stake. Greg, played by Ewan McGregor, provides a contrasting personality to Denise. He is generally more composed when the family first faces the extraordinary situation. His instinct is to reassure the children and maintain some sense of stability, even when the circumstances are becoming increasingly dangerous. His relationship with Denise is particularly important because the movie doesn't present them as a perfectly happy couple. The crisis forces them to confront problems that already existed in their relationship. This makes Greg more than simply the family's father and protector. He becomes part of the movie's exploration of love, responsibility, communication, and regret. The survival situation ultimately tests whether Greg and Denise can put their personal differences aside and work together. That emotional conflict gives their relationship considerably more weight than a typical action movie partnership. Audrey Platt, Maisy Stella. Audrey, portrayed by Maisy Stella, represents the family's intellectual and curious side. She is portrayed as an intelligent young girl with an interest in science and astronomy, which becomes especially meaningful when the family encounters an event that appears to challenge their understanding of reality. Her curiosity is not simply a personality trait. It gives the family another way of interpreting what is happening around them. Instead of looking only at the physical dangers, Audrey attempts to understand the phenomenon itself. This makes her an important contrast to the adults. While Denise and Greg are primarily concerned with immediate survival, Audrey is also interested in why this is happening. Her scientific curiosity, therefore, becomes part of the mystery surrounding Oak Street. Brian, played by Christian Convery, is the younger and more emotionally vulnerable member of the family. Unlike Audrey, who approaches the extraordinary situation with intellectual curiosity, Brian is much more concerned with the things he understands emotionally, particularly his family and his dog. His relationship with the family dog gives Brian an especially human dimension. In a situation filled with enormous creatures and impossible events, his concern for a familiar companion reminds the audience that these characters are still ordinary people caught in something completely extraordinary. Brian's character also demonstrates how differently children respond to danger. His fear and anxiety make the situation feel more immediate, while his attachment to his family gives the story some of its emotional heart. Perhaps the most important character in the movie is actually the family itself. The story places Denise, Greg, Audrey, and Brian in circumstances where they cannot survive independently. Every member has different fears, strengths, and ways of understanding the situation. This is why the movie's central idea of sticking together is so important. The official synopsis specifically describes the family's survival as depending on their ability to remain united. The extraordinary event therefore becomes a test of their family relationship. The dinosaurs and unfamiliar environment create the physical danger, but the family's existing tensions create the emotional conflict. The movie uses the external crisis to force the characters to confront problems that they might otherwise have continued avoiding. The supporting characters help make Oak Street feel like a genuine community rather than simply a backdrop. For the Platt family, the cast includes P.J. Byrne, Chris Coy, Jordan Alexa Davis, and several other performers in neighbor and community roles. These characters are important because the cosmic event affects the entire neighborhood. Not just one family, their presence allows the movie to show different reactions to the same impossible situation: fear, confusion, denial, cooperation, and desperation. Character development. The biggest character development comes from seeing ordinary people forced to become capable of extraordinary things. Denise has to become more decisive. Greg has to confront his responsibilities and relationship problems. Audrey's intelligence becomes useful in understanding the strange phenomenon, and Brian's emotional attachment to his family and familiar world becomes a source of motivation. That is what separates the end of Oak Street from a simple dinosaur spectacle. The dinosaurs provide the danger, but the characters provide the reason to care. Overall, the movie's character design appears to follow one central principle: take an ordinary suburban family and place them in an extraordinary situation to discover who they really are. Denise, Greg, Audrey, and Brian each respond differently to the same crisis, but their survival ultimately depends on learning how to function as a family rather than as four separate individuals, and that makes the Platt family the real heart of the end of Oak Street. The dinosaurs may be the biggest visual attraction, but the emotional question underneath the spectacle is much simpler. When everything familiar disappears, can a family overcome its differences and stay together? While Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Christian Convery form the central Platt family, The End of Oak Street 2026 also features a supporting ensemble that helps make the neighborhood feel like a real community. The supporting cast includes P.J. Byrne, Chris Coy, Jordan Alexa Davis, Bethany Ann Lind, Denitra Eisler, Hudson Meek, Emily Kuroda, Andrea Frankel, and several younger actors. P.J. Byrne is one of the more prominent supporting performers. Byrne has appeared in films and television projects including The Wolf of Wall Street, Babylon, and The Boys. His presence adds another recognizable face to the neighborhood ensemble, although details about his character and The End of Oak Street have largely been kept under wraps. This secrecy fits the movie's overall marketing strategy, which has deliberately avoided revealing too much about its characters or plot. Chris Coy is another important supporting cast member. He has built a strong television and film resume, appearing in projects such as The Deuce and the Underground Railroad. In this movie, his character's details have similarly been kept relatively limited, allowing audiences to discover the supporting characters naturally as the story unfolds. Jordan Alexa Davis is also part of the supporting ensemble. Current cast listings identify her as Jeanette, making her one of the named neighborhood characters rather than simply an unnamed background resident. Her inclusion helps expand the story beyond the Platt family and gives the wider Oak Street community a greater presence. Bethany Ann Lind plays Mary Bogrowski, another named character within the neighborhood. Her role is particularly useful in establishing the sense that Oak Street is a genuine community filled with different families and personalities rather than simply a backdrop created for the Platt family's story. Denitra Eisler plays May, while Hudson Meek portrays Caden. Their characters add younger and community-focused perspectives to the story, particularly important because the extraordinary event affects not just the central family, but the people living around them. The supporting cast also includes Emily Kuroda as Mrs. Valcour, Andrea Frankel as a female neighbor, and Ann G. Bird as Mrs. Huddleston. These characters help populate the neighborhood and contribute to the film's suburban atmosphere. There is also a group of younger performers, including Grayson Thorne Kilpatrick as Buddy, Sims May as Zachary, Michael Christian Moore as Ashen, Johan Mikhail as male teen number 2, and Savannah Renee as female teen. Their presence reinforces one of the movie's important ideas. When the strange event occurs, it affects an entire community rather than just one household. What makes this supporting ensemble interesting is that many character details have intentionally remained limited before release. Rather than revealing exactly how every neighbor fits into the story, the filmmakers have focused their promotional material primarily on the Platt family and the central mystery. This leaves room for the supporting characters to become surprises once audiences Watch the complete movie. Overall, the supporting cast gives The End of Oak Street a much broader human dimension. P.J. Byrne, Chris Coy, Jordan Alexa Davis, Bethany Ann Lind, Denitra Eisler, Hudson Meek, Emily Kuroda, and the other neighborhood performers help turn Oak Street into a believable community. When that entire community is suddenly confronted with an impossible situation, the danger feels much larger than a problem affecting a single family. And that's why the supporting cast matters. The Platt family may be at the heart of the story, but the neighbors make the world around them feel alive. Their presence allows the movie to explore how an extraordinary event can affect an entire suburban community, not just the four people we follow most closely. One of the biggest strengths of The End of Oak Street 2026 is its original concept. Instead of presenting another conventional dinosaur adventure, the film takes an ordinary suburban neighborhood and places it in an extraordinary prehistoric environment. The idea of familiar houses, streets, cars, and families suddenly existing alongside dinosaurs creates a strong contrast that immediately makes the movie visually and conceptually interesting. Another major positive is the involvement of David Robert Mitchell as both writer and director. Mitchell has a reputation for creating mysterious and atmospheric stories, and that experience is particularly suitable for a film where the audience is initially unsure about what has happened to the neighborhood. His previous work suggests that the movie may offer more than straightforward action and could use mystery and suspense to keep viewers engaged. The cast is another strong point. Having Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor in the leading roles gives the movie considerable star power, while Maisy Stella and Convery complete the central family. This is important because the film is not only about surviving dinosaurs, it is also about how a family responds when its entire world suddenly changes. The movie's family-centered storytelling is also a positive feature. The Platt family must stay together in an environment where they have no idea what is going to happen next. This gives the audience an emotional reason to care about the characters beyond simply waiting for the next creature attack. Another major advantage is the combination of mystery and spectacle. The trailers do not immediately explain why Oak Street has been transported or exactly where it has ended up. At the same time, they reveal enough spectacular imagery, including dinosaurs, to create excitement. This balance can encourage viewers to watch the movie not only for the action, but also to discover the answers behind the central mystery. The visual effects potential is another significant strength. With industrial light and magic involved in the visual effects work, the film has access to one of the industry's most experienced teams for creating digital creatures and environments. The challenge of placing realistic dinosaurs inside recognizable suburban surroundings gives the visual effects department an opportunity to create something visually distinctive. The movie also benefits from its genre combination. It isn't limited to one category. It combines science fiction, survival thriller, adventure, mystery, creature elements, and family drama. This mixture could allow a film to appeal to different types of audiences, rather than relying exclusively on dinosaur fans. Another positive is the film's sense of mystery and secrecy. For a long period, very little was known about the project, which was originally titled Flowervale Street. Even its marketing campaign has avoided revealing the complete story. This creates curiosity and allows audiences to enter the movie without already knowing every major plot point. The suburban setting is also a particularly effective creative choice. Most large-scale dinosaur movies take place in jungles, islands, laboratories, or specially constructed parks. The End of Oak Street takes the opposite approach by placing prehistoric danger directly into an environment that audiences immediately recognize. That familiar setting could make the extraordinary events feel even more shocking. Finally, the film has the potential to provide a strong theatrical experience. The combination of large-scale creatures, visual effects, atmospheric cinematography, and an IMAX presentation is clearly designed for the big screen. If the visual effects and action sequences deliver on their promise, the movie could be particularly impressive in a theater. The biggest strength of The End of Oak Street is arguably its combination of an unusual premise, strong cast, mysterious storytelling, family emotion, and large-scale visual spectacle. It takes a simple question. What if a dinosaur suddenly appeared in an ordinary suburban neighborhood and expands it into an ambitious science fiction survival story? If David Robert Mitchell successfully balances the human story with the dinosaur spectacle, The End of Oak Street could stand out from the many familiar creature and science fiction movies and offer audiences something genuinely different. And potential weakness of The End of Oak Street 2026 is that its unusual concept could become more complicated than necessary. The movie combines science fiction, family drama, mystery, survival, dinosaurs, and adventure. While this combination can be exciting, it also creates a difficult balancing act for the filmmakers. If one element receives too much attention, another may feel underdeveloped. Another possible negative point is the film's mysterious premise. Keeping the explanation hidden can create suspense. But if the eventual answers do not feel convincing or satisfying, some viewers may feel that the movie created a great deal of mystery without providing an equally strong payoff. The entire story depends heavily on explaining why Oak Street was transported and where the neighborhood has actually ended up. The family drama could also become a weakness if it slows down the pacing. The movie is built around the Platt family's relationships, but audiences attracted by the dinosaurs and science fiction elements may expect a faster-moving adventure. If too much time is spent on family disagreements or personal problems, some viewers could feel that the main survival story is moving too slowly. Another potential issue is the inevitable comparison with Jurassic Park. Once audiences see dinosaurs in a major Hollywood production, comparisons are almost unavoidable. The challenge for The End of Oak Street is to prove that its dinosaurs and survival sequences are not simply repeating ideas that audiences have already seen many times. The visual effects could also become a disadvantage if they are inconsistent. The movie depends heavily on digital creatures and environments, and audiences are now very familiar with high-quality CGI. If the dinosaurs do not look convincing, or if they fail to interact naturally with the real actors and environments, the film's most important visual attraction could lose its impact. There is also the risk of high audience expectations. The combination of Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, David Robert Mitchell, J.J. Abrams' dinosaurs, and a mysterious science fiction premise creates considerable anticipation. When a film generates this much curiosity before release, audiences may expect something extraordinary. If the final movie turns out to be more conventional than the trailers suggest, some viewers could be disappointed. Budget, approximately $85 million. Box office. The final worldwide box office collection is not yet available, as The End of Oak Street is scheduled for theatrical release on August 14, 2026. So, the movie enters theaters with a relatively substantial $85 million production budget, and its commercial success will depend on how strongly audiences respond to its unusual combination of science fiction, family adventure, and dinosaurs. And that brings us to the end of our complete journey through The End of Oak Street 2026. From its unusual concept and mysterious cosmic event to the Platt family's struggle for survival in a prehistoric world, this movie offers a fascinating combination of science fiction, adventure, mystery, family drama, and dinosaur action. With David Robert Mitchell behind the camera and Anne Hathaway, Ewan McGregor, Maisy Stella, and Convery leading the cast, the film certainly has the ingredients to deliver something memorable on the big screen. Whether it ultimately becomes a thrilling new science fiction experience or falls short of the huge expectations surrounding it is something audiences will discover when the movie arrives in theaters. But one thing is already clear: the idea of an ordinary suburban neighborhood suddenly finding itself surrounded by dinosaurs is unusual enough to make this movie worth watching. If you enjoyed this complete breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Hollybuzz, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming movie reviews, breakdowns, behind-the-scenes facts, and latest Hollywood updates. Let us know in the comments, would you watch The End of Oak Street in theaters? Until next time, stay curious, keep watching movies, and keep watching Hollybuzz.